Once there were millions and millions of chinchillas like this one, supplying the world with the most beautiful and most valuable of fur. But then something happened, and the world demand for chinchilla could no longer be met. What happened? It was here in South America that the chinchilla once lived. Now none are to be found there. Let's see what history has to say about it. The chinchilla got its name from the Chincha Indian tribe who roamed the high Andes Mountains many centuries ago. The Chincha Indians trapped the chinchilla for food and clothing. But, as history tells us, the primitive Chincha Indians were conquered and hunted down to the last man by the mighty Inca nation. With the Chincha Indians out of the way, the Incas claimed the chinchilla as their own. They'd seen the great beauty of the chinchilla fur and immediately decreed that henceforth it should be worn only by Inca royalty. But hundreds of years later, in 1592, Pizarro and his Spanish conquistadores left Spain and came to South America in search of gold and silver and the many treasures of them. They knew that here was something just as precious as gold or silver. They conquered the Incas and took the chinchilla furs, along with their other plunder, back to Europe, where chinchilla immediately became the most loved fur of all the royal families. Chinchilla fur became so much in demand that adventurers seeking their fortunes came to South America and forced the Inca Indians to trap and slaughter the valuable little animals by the thousands. The chinchilla ran for his life, but by the early 1900s, the little fellows had become almost extinct. But all was not completely dark for the chinchilla, for he had one friend left. High in the mountains of Chile, in the year 1920, a young American mining engineer had been sent by his company to search for valuable ore. His name was Mathias F. Chapman. Although Chapman had never seen a chinchilla, he never tired of listening to the elaborate tales of the Indians as they told him of how the chinchilla had once roamed these hills in great numbers, of the magnificent fur of these animals, and how finally the chinchilla had been trapped and slaughtered until now there were none. And then one day, Chapman's camp had a visitor. An Indian came out of the mountains carrying a large can. Chapman's Indian helpers went to greet him and to see what he had brought. Imagine their surprise on seeing a chinchilla. None had been seen in many years. When Chapman saw the animal, he knew instantly that Domingo's stories of the beauty of the chinchilla had not been exaggerated. Then he noticed the little animal needed water, but when he mentioned it, the Indian said no. Chapman, thinking the Indian misunderstood, went after his canteen. But the Indian stood firm. No water. The Indians believed that the chinchillas lived without water, would die if they drank it. Again, Chapman offered to give it a drink. The Indian still refused. But would Chapman like to buy the animal? Then he could do as he pleased. Chapman was delighted. He paid the Indian his price and took possession of the animal. Both men were happy with the transaction. And now the chinchilla could have some water. Chapman called his faithful friend Domingo, told him to build a cage to house his new purchase. And as he thought about the chinchilla he had so luckily bought, a dream began to form in his mind. Once, up in those hills, there were millions of chinchillas. Now, they were nearly extinct. What if he could rebuild those herds? What if he could find a few more chinchillas, take them back to the United States? What if he could rebuild the chinchilla industry? And people once again would be able to satisfy their desire for chinchilla fur. That was Chapman's dream. And he decided to make it come true. Chapman went to the South American officials to secure permission to carry out his plan. But he soon found they'd placed a ban on further export of chinchillas. For months, he traveled from official to official, trying to interest them in his plan to save the chinchilla from complete extinction. Each time, the answer was a discouraging no. But Chapman was not a man who was easily defeated. In spite of months of discouragement, he continued his efforts. Finally, his courage and determination were rewarded. He contacted a man who believed in his sincerity, a man who realized that the chinchilla would perish from the earth unless somebody took a hand. With his help, permission was granted. Chapman told Senor Alvarez of his hopes, of his dreams for rebuilding the chinchilla herds. And Senor Alvarez, in the language of his country, bade him que vaya con Dios. Chapman went back to the mountains, and with the Indians he'd hired to help him, he began his search for more of the precious animals. He outfitted and grub-staked the Indian, sent them high into the Andes, into regions where no white man had ever trod. Weeks later, they would come back, tired, disappointed, and unsuccessful. After resting for a few days, they would go out again. But their lack of success was heartbreaking. After months of effort, they had found only 2 chinchillas. The months stretched into years. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. But 2 male chinchillas were the only occupants of the cage Domingo had built 3 years before. Finally, on one of the many expeditions, Trini, one of the faithful Indians, stumbled upon perhaps the last remaining colony of chinchillas in South America. There were 9 of them. 9, all in one little colony. Imagine it. Imagine finding the one remaining colony of chinchillas in all the vast South American continent. Trini was able to capture them all, then head triumphantly back to camp. Mathias F. Chapman was a happy man. After 3 years of persistent effort, his dream was taking shape. Now he could take his little herd back to the United States. Here you see the Chapman Ranch as it is today. With the 11 animals that Chapman arrived with in 1923, only 4 of which were females, he gradually built this fine ranch. Thanks to Mathias F. Chapman's faith and perseverance, the chinchilla has not become extinct, not just a memory. People in all walks of life heard of Chapman. They went to him, purchased animals, and soon the chinchilla industry was reborn. Ranches slowly spread all over the country, in California, Maine, Texas, in Alabama. Let's take a look at a ranch that started in 1946. Clem started with 6 high-quality chinchillas while he was still working at an aircraft factory. Since that time, his ranch has produced nearly $200,000 worth of fine breeding stock. Ed here is one of the 2 full-time employees working on the ranch. Since Clem's crop of babies are sold out a year ahead of time, he devotes a great deal of time to furthering the best interests of the chinchilla industry. This is one of the model ranches of the chinchilla industry. Here is the monogamous breeding unit. The male and female are mated when they are 4 or 5 months old and live together as man and wife for the rest of their lifetime. They often give birth to their first litter before they're a year old and continue having babies well into old age. These babies are only 2 weeks old. Babies are born fully furred with eyes open and scamper around within a few minutes after birth. Incidentally, these parents are 9 years old. Chinchillas have babies in 111-day periods and often produce 3 litters a year. They often breed again the day after giving birth, and some have been known to have 8 or 9 litters consecutively. Mrs. Chinchilla is a wonderful mother and nurses her babies with tender care. Chinchillas love to play. Here's a frisky rascal burning up the road on an exercise wheel. Yes, he loves individual attention. For this reason, the choice chinchilla of the future will undoubtedly come from the small ranches rather than from mass breeding farms where individual attention is not possible. Best of all, they love to perform for their owners and will continue as long as they get attention. Yes, the chinchilla makes a wonderful pet for people of all ages. You can be 9 or 90 and never grow tired of their antics. Let's examine one of these little creatures closely and see what makes them so valuable. Notice when Jerry blows into its fur. The fur of this animal is made up of 3 different colors. Next to the skin, the fur is a deep slate blue. Above that is a white bar about 1/8 of an inch wide. The white is capped with a bluish gray, and it is this combination, this triple tone, that enables the furrier to create the lustrous blue-gray effect that gives the chinchilla its outstanding beauty. Incidentally, that's another reason why it's so valuable. Chinchilla fur cannot be imitated. Another remarkable quality about chinchilla fur is its texture. But what about care? Well, it's probably easier to take care of a chinchilla than any other animal you've ever known. First of all, the chinchilla eats very little. A little hay, timothy, or alfalfa, any kind will do, and a few grain pellets are all he requires. Total cost of his feed, about $2 or $3 per animal per year. Then, after checking his water bottle, You can forget about him until the next day. His pen needs cleaning about once a week, which is as simple as this. You can easily take care of 40 or 50 animals in your spare time. In fact, nearly all chinchilla breeders started their business as a spare time hobby. One reason for this is that the chinchilla is probably the cleanest animal in the world. He has absolutely no odor and makes practically no noise. And so he can be raised wherever you happen to live, either in the country or in the city. On this residential street, a young couple have started their chinchilla ranch in their patio. He's never had so much fun with any hobby. Jack and his wife consider this an investment in future security. This city dweller has converted his garage into a prospering chinchilla ranch. This garage now houses 30 animals. And oh yes, here's an important piece of equipment, the dust bath. That container is filled with a fine, dusty sand. And the animal, by rolling in it, removes all moisture and oil from its fur, keeping it clean and fluffy. He takes this daily bath with as much regularity as you brush your teeth. He enjoys it, too. Well, you've seen about all the equipment you need. Now let's take a look at another phase of raising chinchillas, polygamous breeding. We've told you that a male and a female chinchilla prefer to live as man and wife throughout their lifetime. But for breeding the fine fur qualities of one chinchilla into several others, experienced ranchers have tried polygamous breeding. That is, one male has been fathering the litters of 2 or 3 females. Much is being done with artificial insemination of chinchillas. Here you see Dr. Highland F. Kagi and his associate, Max Domina, discussing an artificial insemination. Dr. Kagi is a veterinarian who has been engaged in chinchilla research for the past 19 years. This handsome chinchilla is the result of 6 years of selective breeding. He is a champion sire as well as a champion chinchilla. Chinchilla fur makes a flattering trim for dresses. Notice the collar the young lady is wearing. Isn't that beautiful? One reason chinchilla fur is so effective for garment trim is because of its light weight and softness. It will not pull or wrinkle the flimsiest material. This chinchilla and his offspring have won over 100 trophies and ribbons at chinchilla shows throughout the country for fur of unusually high quality. But breeding stock was only a part of Chapman's dream. The day he was really looking forward to was the day when commercial pelting would be a reality. When the chinchilla population has been increased sufficiently, ranchers will add pelting to their activities and thus add a new source of profit. It is in pelting cages like these where the animal's fur is brought to tip-top primeness. Pelts are sent. In any story of chinchillas, the name of Willard H. George is important. One of the nation's most prominent furriers, he is a man who has unsparingly devoted his time, his money, and his faith to the chinchilla industry. The demand for beautiful pelts, such as those you see Mr. George appraising, is enormous. But that demand cannot be met until many more thousands of far-sighted individuals join the ranchers who are raising high-quality breeding stock that will provide the pelts needed by great fur artists like Willard H. George. This is an example of the exquisite coats and garments made of fine chinchilla fur that Milady has so long waited for. Yes, this is truly the story of a dream come true. Chapman's dream, of making chinchilla garments once again available for the thousands of discriminating women who are clamoring for this most beautiful of all furs, chinchilla. The chinchilla business is as modern as any you can name. For fast service, breeding stock is shipped by air to all parts of America, Mexico, and Canada. European countries also receive shipments of the precious animals from the United States. But who's the pretty young lady? Why, of course, that's Miss Roberta Lynn, America's newest singing sensation. Charming, isn't she? As you can see, Miss Lynn is an ardent chinchilla enthusiast. It is on ranches like these that breeding stock is being produced by men and women who see their future security in the chinchilla industry. Lois started 2.5 years ago with 2 pairs of chinchillas. Her ranch has produced a total of 76 animals to date. This is the Cowles Ranch. The Cowles Ranch is typical of the chinchilla success story. Leo Cowles was a barber. He is now retired from his shop to devote full time to his flourishing chinchilla business. His daughter Pat is a partner in the enterprise and chinchilla princess of 1953. The Fillmores, George, Flo, and young Denny, have raised chinchillas for the past 3 years. George prefers to sell his chinchillas on the wholesale market. In the past 2 years, the Fillmores have taken in $11,000 in cash on the sale of their breeding stock. Do you wonder why the Fillmores are enthusiastic about the chinchilla business? A very progressive chinchilla rancher once said, all you have to do to be successful in the chinchilla business is to get started right. And that's wonderful advice. So what about you? When are you going to get in on this fascinating and highly profitable business? The business of raising chinchillas. Yes, folks, these little fellows can certainly be your friends. I bet if those 2 little fellows up there could talk, they'd probably say, why don't you get started today? You just take us home now, and we'll both get started.